Introduce Rose to the podcast.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me, Waneka. My name is Rose Frezza, and I am a recruiter. I recruit specifically for positions in the marketing and creative fields. So basically, any position that you might find in-house in the marketing department at a company of any size, really, or if you're talking about a marketing or advertising agency, pretty much any position there. So daily, I work with a lot of copywriters, graphic designers, UX, UI folks, publicists, account managers, and occasionally the sales slash marketing role. And I live in Austin, Texas.
Oh, nice. And so how I got in touch with her many years ago, it was on a friendly term. I think we went to was it a music event or like a blues thing downtown many, many, many years ago.
Yes.
And I just kind of kept in touch. I've moved away from Texas and I just started to notice some of the things that you do. I'm like, man, this woman is really interesting and really cool. And when I finally decided I was tired of COVID closing a lot of my jobs and things like that, and it's not COVID's fault, it's just a lot of those started to go remote or phase out. I wanted a career change, and I think I reached out to several people, and then you reached out to me. I emailed you, we did back and forth. And so I wanted you to kind of have a conversation first. How did you start? Because I know you were marketing first. I've kind of like spied your LinkedIn and then you're now in recruiting. How did that transition go for you, Rose?
Yeah, so like many people, I think, as I continue to have this conversation with folks, before the pandemic, I was working in marketing and advertising, but I was a fully on-site worker. I started out about 10 years ago working in marketing. I worked as a content creator for a social media agency for several years, and then I started a new role with the University of Texas, marketing college and career readiness to different schools and districts in the Texas region, South region. And during the pandemic in 2010, I had been doing this for almost 10 years already. And all of the distractions were sort of stripped away when everyone has to suddenly work from home. And so I think what happened is I realized that without the distractions and or reward of going to work, seeing your colleagues that you might like very much, having coffee and donuts in the break room, the routine that goes along with going to work every day. Like I was a very routinized person. I would pack my bag at the beginning of the day with my lunch, with my gym clothes, and go to work all day, go to the gym after work, maybe meet a friend for dinner or happy hour, and then go home. And so when all of that was kind of stripped away, I realized that I was quite unhappy with what I was doing, like the actual nuts and bolts and content, what I was doing. I was good at it, but it wasn't something that I enjoyed anymore. And so, like a lot of people that, you know, found the pandemic to be a big change, maybe a little depressing or anxiety producing, I just started to think there has to be something out there that I enjoy doing more than this. And so I reached out to my community, I reached out to my friends, and this was just like on a very casual level, like just expressing my dissatisfaction every day that I was feeling. And a friend said to me, have you ever thought about working in HR or being a recruiter? Human resources, recruiting, little related. And something I kind of kept in the back of my head. I started doing some, research on the internet. And then as like a way to help myself through the pandemic, I actually joined a co-working space so that I actually had somewhere to go during the day so that I wasn't feeling stuck in my house and I get a little bit back of that routine or the socialization that I missed. Because it's hard to be self-disciplined when you're at home all day long and nobody is really, truly, truly, truly monitoring you. In a conventional workplace, there's a lot to be said for like, okay, now it's work time. Everyone is sitting at their computers, behaving, working. But when you're the only person, that can be really difficult. So I started going to a co-working space and I met a recruiter there. I met someone who specialized in tech recruiting. And every day I would go there and we would say hello and I would kind of observe what he and his team were doing. And, he started explaining it to me and he gave me a few sample projects to work on. He said, this is a role I'm trying to fill. why don't you get on LinkedIn Recruiter and see if you can find me some candidates? And so I did, and it became apparent very quickly that I was quite good at it. And so he ended up paying me for the time that I spent doing a bit of work for him, but he also served as a reference for me when I applied for my very first job in recruiting in earnest. And so I feel so thankful that that happened. I mean, can you believe it? Just because I think I was outward with my curiosity and willing to be a little social, that I made this very important connection. So I often think back on that. It's been a year and a half now that I've been a dedicated recruiter in marketing and advertising. And I think what makes it so easy for me, or that I'm so successful at it, is that I worked in the seat for 10 years. So I know what to look for in a candidate, and I know the questions to ask to determine whether someone is truly qualified for the roles that I'm trying to fill. And it creates a lot of trust when I am speaking with my clients, because they know that I know, I'm not someone that has never worked in this field. So that's the story of how I became a recruiter.
So my head does this thing where when someone is telling me their background, I'm imagining what that must look like, because when we get to the other side of someone being successful, to me, I feel like in their journey, we forget that there were bumps around the road, or like there were intentional moments, right? I hate podcasts or media outlets that say, oh, and I just became this person and you can do it too. I'm like, oh, girl, no. Like, I remember crying a lot for so many different things, lots of like, I thought I've conquered what I need to do, and now I'm seems like I'm back to square one. So I'm very open about, you have to be consistent, and like I love what you said about just being intentionally. You intentionally put yourself in that space. That man did not randomly find you in the desert out of nowhere. And said, you look capable. So can you speak to like moments where like I think for what you do, and you can correct me, people have to be intentional. Can you talk a little bit about that, especially in the role of like getting qualified candidates? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Versus
Sure.
when
Yeah, I
people like,
think when you say what it means to be intentional, that makes me think of how important it is for me to use very powerful and direct language when I'm speaking with my candidates, whether I am qualifying them for a job or I am advocating on their behalf. Because what will happen is I am given a list of jobs that need filling, and it's my job to find the right candidates, package them up, and then present them to my client with every bit of information that they could possibly need to help them say, yes, I would like to interview this person, since you've already pre-screened them, you know what to look for, etc. So being intentional with language means asking what you really want to know and leaving space for an answer to be given. I think all too often we perhaps shy away from difficult questions. For instance, perhaps questions around the range that someone is seeking for compensation, or you have said that you're an expert in this field. Tell me a little bit more about that, or how exactly did you execute this strategy? Okay. So honing in on what it is that I really want to know, leaving space for an answer, because sometimes people can be uncomfortable with silence. And so if you are speaking too much and you're not leaving space for someone to answer, then it can really stifle your conversation and keep things from being uncovered that you might really want to know. So that is what I thought of the first thing when you said being intentional. Does that like resonate with you? Does that kind of answer what you were thinking about?
it does, because I love clarity, and I also love honesty, right? And my honesty was when I spoke with you, I'm grateful that I remember what you said to me that I really respected. You're like, I don't know that this is the role for you. But if there's anything that comes along, I'll let you know and I'll keep you on the pipeline. And I think that being honest with people that are desperately seeking or just seeking, right? They might feel like a little bit of like, oh, darn, I wish that would have been it, right? But I always ask people, do you want to do something for 6 months or do you want to do it long term?
Mhm.
And sometimes being honest allows people to, one, find out, is this really what they did want to do? Like at that time, I think after you asked me that, I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of done with corporate and business. Like I'm okay now. Like I'm done with it. And
Mhm.
I had to be honest like you were. And I don't want to assume, but do you think that's what sets you apart from some of the other recruiters who are just trying to fill seats? That's what I call them. And they're doing their job well because people need jobs. But do you think being that honest and being that direct in your message sets you apart from other recruiters? Or is there something else that you found that separates you?
I think that in our fields, every agency operates a little bit differently, but there's one thing that is kind of repeated over and over again, which is how important a sense of urgency is when we are advocating for our clients and then also advocating for our candidates, but also helping our clients find the best candidate for them. And so you're correct. There is this notion of urgency can be a little too much sometimes if someone is just literally trying to fill a seat. But what happens if you're not actively listening and if you're not really using your intuition and allowing space for a candidate to describe to you exactly what their aspirations are, what they want, and what would make them happy, then 3 or 4 or 5 months down the road, they might come back to you and say, I'm sorry, this wasn't the role for me. And so I always try to think in my head, I am not looking for the best candidate right now. I'm looking for the best candidate long term,
Mm.
because time is of the essence, right? Time is important. Time is money. And a client doesn't just want you to shove someone in that seat that is not truly going to be happy, or that you're aware might have some very deep-seated internal doubts. So it is very much about listening to your tuition, I think, and just being a very active listener and digging a little bit deeper if you feel like you are uncovering some hesitations.
Okay. And what is the now the person that first reached out to you to enter this role?
Mhm.
Did they sort of mentor you? I don't want to assume anything. Or did they give you an advice? Or what best advice have you gotten since entering this role? Close to 2 years, maybe a few more months, and then you'll make 2 years. What were some of
Mhm.
the best advice that you're like, this really helped me, or this?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I would say that one of the best pieces of advice, and I actually received this advice prior to becoming a recruiter, but it's something that I continue to tell my candidates: always, always, always negotiate your salary.
Okay.
Always. Don't feel guilty about it. Don't feel bad about it. Don't think for 1 second that your employer has not anticipated that you are going to negotiate your salary. There is always wiggle room built in. There is always room for you to make the case as to why you think you're the best candidate for the role and very well qualified. Um, and there's so much research that shows that women on average categorically over their lifespan will earn less than men because they are not posing that question and um, sort of laying out the facts. And the thing is, there's no harm in asking. You have to ask to receive. It sounds very cliche. One of the things I always say is, first you ask, then you believe, then you receive.
Nice.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh my goodness. So I first my background is from a different country. We get the lease. We're expected to take the lease and make it work. So I'm not even gonna lie, I've never negotiated
Mhm.
any contract. I've never asked questions. I've never gone back and said, I do like 80 times the work. Can and I think too, it's also familial background. If you were raised to accept better, you're
Mhm.
going to always think you deserve the least, even if you're
Mhm.
doing the most.
Yes.
So I love that you brought that up because I can only speak from my experience, and I'm sure some people will listen to this and they will become more aware that it's okay to say, you know what, hold it right there. I think I've been carrying a lot of weight,
Mhm.
and what else can we do with this contract or this, how
Yes.
can I negotiate? So now that I have you here and the time is valuable, how can someone best negotiate a deal? What are some of those tips that you can give us? Because we're dying to know.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I would say, first of all, um, that when you are seeking a new role and someone asks you, what your salary expectations are, it is best to give a range, of your salary expectations. So you can say that, such as, I'd be comfortable, in a role at, anywhere from 70 to 85K. You can say I'm open to roles at 70K on up. But talking about money is not bad. Talking about numbers, like, it's not a dirty thing that you should avoid doing. I think it causes a lot of anxiety in people. So being specific with your numbers is perfectly fine. The other thing I would say is that, the best time for you to do that is when you're about to accept a new position.
Mm,
Because I did not know this rule, this rule, always negotiate, until I was 27 years old. So let's say that I already had this in my mind when I got my very first job at 21. I would have already started up here. You know what I'm saying? And then every subsequent year or every subsequent job, more and more and more. But because I didn't know that, now I'm starting down here. And
mm,
for the rest of my life, unless there's a huge skills gap and I make a big leap up in leadership over the course of my lifetime, I'll be earning a little bit less than I could have, you know?
mm.
So really taking advantage of when you're starting a new position. And then if you are in a current position and you're trying to negotiate, the things that you want to present along with this conversation is, how have you gone above and beyond? How have your actions impacted the company? What are the key performance indicators that you have had an integral part in, increasing to really show your value? And then be very clear. I need X amount of dollars to stay in this role. And then, of course, be prepared for them to come back with a counteroffer, and there might be some going back and forth and some negotiating there, but best to aim a little bit higher than you eventually want to settle on, because you're going to account for that compromise on each end, right?
Okay. I love that because, yeah, trust me, my brain is like, man, I'm kicking myself because I feel like that's where I've kind of kept myself in a box of accepting the least. And I
Mhm,
didn't know about that range question until
mhm.
maybe 3 years ago.
Yes,
I was like listening to like productivity podcasts or people like yourself, like taking ownership in your career field and just seeing, wow, I didn't even know that was something that I could have a conversation about. So this is going
yes.
to be very helpful, especially like, say, for instance, okay, now I'm going to have you wear the hiring hat and not the recruiter hat, right?
Mhm,
I want to talk a lot about my college, not just college, but say they're going into from high school to college, and yes, college will graduate. And I feel for them because college prepares us for the mental knowledge, but life prepares us for the emotional knowledge. And unfortunately, someone used to tell me life gives you the test first and then the lessons later. And
mm,
so that's where
mhm.
we learn, like eventually we have to learn. So now that I put you in that role of the hiring manager, what are some of the tips you can tell a lot of my college grad or coming out of college and they're seeking for a job? How do they prepare themselves, their personality? What will make them more attractive to those roles that they're seeking?
Sure. Well, I would say, in terms of, something very practical that everyone has to do, is have a resume, right? And so one very important thing that I see missing from some resumes, and I always inquire about this verbally if I don't see it, is what are the actual, tactical programs that you know how to use? And of course, this is going to be different from every field of expertise. But if I'm speaking with a marketing generalist, marketing manager, there are many, many tools and proficiencies that I'm specifically laser focused looking for because the client has told me I need someone who knows how to do this. And so there should always be a section on your resume, whether you're a graphic designer or a marketing generalist, or perhaps something a little more technical like a coder. We need to know, do you know Google Analytics? Are you proficient with certain programs that you can use to do mass social media postings? If you're a copywriter or a copy editor, what editorial styles are you proficient in? If you're like a coder, what coding languages do you know? So that's something that I see left off from resumes from time to time, because it allows the recruiter to jump a couple steps ahead, or even the hiring manager, and say, check, 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 this one goes in the good pile. But if they have to, if they're wading through a tons of resumes and they don't see it, you're probably just going to go in the doubtful pile, and you might not even get a phone call for them to dig a little bit deeper to that. And then the other thing I would say is, especially in the marketing field, if you have the sort of professional deliverables that you've actually created, it's a great thing to have a website. It's very cheap and affordable to create a personal portfolio website these days using Wix or Squarespace. If you're a copywriter, show us some clips of copy that you've written. If you're a graphic designer, show us some of the projects that you've been working on, some of the deliverables you've created. If you've created flyers or posters, or digital ads or print ads, it's very easy to do. Even people who have little more technical skills in nature can still find ways to display their samples and what they can do with a website. And it really adds a good bit of credibility to someone who is looking, what impact has this person made? Or I see this resume here right in front of me. It adds like one more step of credibility to be able to go to LinkedIn, check out, make sure they're like what they're saying, their timeline is accurate, but also go to their portfolio site. It's just a very easy, user-friendly way to amp up your credibility. And then the final thing is, this is like more of a soft skill, and it happens often, kind of reveals itself in the interview stage. I will have clients say to me, Rose, it's clear that this person has the technical abilities, but they were so incredibly nervous in the interview that they were almost unable to explain to me how they would be successful in this role. And to that, I say, really practice like selling yourself or answering very typical interview questions in front of a mirror. If you have access to a friend or a family member who can do role plays with you before an interview, an interesting little side note about me is that I used to be very shy. I used to have like the worst presentation anxiety. When I was in grad school, I had so much anxiety that I could hardly even, make a presentation to my class. And so a mentor of mine told me to take like a speech giving course, which is called Toastmasters. And then I shared that information with another professor, and he said, Toastmasters, it's okay, but it's a little like too stuffy. So if you like to have fun and you seem like an easygoing person, you like to laugh, you should go take an improv class. A lot of people think that improv is the same thing as stand-up. It's not. Stand-up is really kind of scary in my opinion. But in improv classes, you're basically just like playing these games that help you to think quicker, be more comfortable on your toes, kind of go with your instincts and not be so concerned with what you look like when you're expressing yourself. So I took a sample improv class, and when I knew in like the first hour, I just knew I had never laughed so hard in my life. I knew that this was going to be very pivotal for me. And so I ended up taking more classes, and fast forward 10 years, now I teach improv classes to others. And I also perform. I enjoy getting on stage and, playing these short games, improv games, and doing narrative, long form improv. So it's being just a little more relaxed and being a little more self-confident is something that can go a long way.
I like that. And I think this is going to be so helpful because I was just about to like have you highlight your background. Again, I always think people get not very presentable personalities like yourself. and they assume that you come from fetus to this person. Like, always like, I'm always shocked when I mentor kids and they're like, oh, that was so great. You did that so great, Miss A. That's what they call me. And
Uh-huh.
like, do you really think I came like this? Like, this
Yeah.
so, like I told one of my kids that I used to be so shy that
Mhm.
I will fake being sick if I don't make it first into class so I could hide and sit in
Oh
my
my
corner.
goodness.
I would
Yeah.
fake being sick so I could go to the nurse until class was over. And it helped because I was an A student. So my teachers never used it as, oh, she's trying to skip class.
Mhm.
Genuinely just said, okay, go ahead. And I would hide in the nurse's
Mhm.
office until class was over. That's how mortified I used to be because I was bullied so much for my accent. Now nothing matters to me. Nothing scares me.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that out because people just generally think, oh, you must be okay doing all this because you're extroverted. I'm like, whew, I wish
Yeah.
I had videos where it was absolutely cringeworthy. So thank you for bringing that out.
Yeah.
I want to be, I'm more curious because I want you to use this spot to kind of like speak on how you found that balance of supporting your career really well and making sure that you still have you still had time for yourself, like to be who you want to be.
Yes. Yeah. So, let's see. I, like many people, I think, honestly, I think this is part of the human condition. I don't think we're meant to sit at desks for 8 to 10 hours a day. You know, I do have ADHD. I choose to take medicine for it, and it does help me focus. But I think what I'm getting at is I don't think it's in human nature for us to operate with a 40 or 50-hour work week like we do. And so, I uh, sort of combat that or help my brain work better for me by using a few different tools. One thing that I have here, this is called a cube timer. Okay, it's got 15-minute increment, 60-minute, 30-minute, 20-minute. And every time I am starting a new major task, which could be that most of my task-based work is I'm trying to fill 20 plus roles at any given time. So I'll say, okay, it's time for me to devote 20 minutes to this role, and I'll turn it like this. And then when the 20 minutes is over, it goes off. There's a method also that's kind of like this called the Pomodoro method. Um, and so that helps me not be affected by time blindness, which is when you get immersed in a task and you completely lose your sense of how fast time is going by. And it also helps me to know, okay, if I can focus deeply on this task for 20 minutes and maybe do that twice, then I can go for a walk around the block, or then I can go flip my laundry from the washer to the dryer, or then I can go make lunch. So I think being a master of your time is very important, and not forgetting to reward yourself when you know you've done a good job of focusing and accomplishing the task at hand. Um, the other thing I think is technology is very ubiquitous, right? So just because you're not sitting at your desk doesn't mean your brain is not still focused on work. Personally, I do choose to keep my work email on my phone because there are times when a matter is urgent and I need to do something about it, because it might affect my work early the next morning. If, a candidate cancels an interview at 10 p.m., I need to notify someone that they won't be on the call at 8 a.m. But I think limiting your time of exposure to that really high urgency or high intensity work is very important. And being mindful of what exactly it is that you're doing with your time. I recently made a choice to delete Instagram app and Facebook app from my phone because I started using the feature that's it's part of the homepage where you can see exactly how many minutes or even hours in some cases a day that you're spending on these apps. And I was like, oh my God, that is unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable that 3 or 4 hours of my day has been spent somehow looking at this thing that doesn't really bring me any closer to real people. and certainly brings up all of these strange feelings about maybe comparing yourself to others or consuming more goods, ordering more things. We're being marketed to all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I think you just have to be really firm with your time boundaries. If you put your nose down and you're a good focuser for 8 hours a day, do something you really enjoy at the end of the day. Turn your devices off, make yourself a delicious meal, go for a walk with a friend. And try to remember that like life is way more than work. If you haven't done a new hobby in a while, if you haven't learned a new task, now is the time, because there are many exciting things that you could learn how to do or that you might find joy in, or that will just help make you a more well-rounded individual. And all of that magic can happen outside of normal work hours, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love everything you just said. There are ways we can implement it in ways that works for us. Um, I want to also, I always close the conversation with my guests by asking them, two things. Have you found success in your mind? What that seems for you, right?
Mhm.
And what are some of the things that you say to yourself to motivate you to continue being who you need to be at 100% for yourself?
Yes. Yes. I definitely believe that I am successful. I am, everyone is motivated by something different, right? Like I'll be very frank with you and say that I am a very money motivated individual. I am. And the role that I'm in as a recruiter, I make a base salary, but I also make commission based on my placements and how long they stay in their roles. And it's uncapped. So think about that. The sky's the limit. That could really take someone who is maybe prone to being a workaholic and just throw them into an absolute disastrous, like 60, 80 hour a week spiral, right? Um, I am money motivated, but I am not so money motivated that I want to be working until 8 or 10 o'clock every evening. But the fact that I wake up every day and I don't dread going to work,
Mm.
and that um, I think to myself within reason, if I reach out to one more candidate or if I glance at a couple more resumes, I could find the diamond that I'm looking for. That is my intrinsic motivation to keep going. And that is how I know that I'm being successful, because I'm excited about it. And it certainly doesn't hurt that I'm making more in this role than I ever have before in my life. That is just such a blessing. But I think that's how I define success, is that I don't dread going to work. And I think it's because my job isn't predictable. Every day is a little different. I'm going to talk to someone new. I'm going to get a new role that I've never had before, that I have to learn about before I can actually find the right person to fill it.
Mhm.
Um, and then what was the second half of the question about
Well, I think
success?
you kind of like put it together. Like what
Mhm.
motivates you to keep coming and being yourself
Yeah.
100%?
Yeah.
And
Because I know, Waneka, that if I don't unplug at the end of the day,
mhm.
if I don't, get to bed early and read a book, which is like one of my pleasures. I love it so much. It sounds so simple, but it's one of my favorite things to do, in bed by 10 o'clock reading. Then I cannot be that high energy individual the next day. My job is very social. I'm on the phone with folks all day long. And what's interesting is I wouldn't actually call myself an extrovert. I think in my personal life, I'm quite more of an introvert. But in order to have that energy, I have to do what I need to do during my off hours to like power up, So I think that's it.
I love that. You're going to help so many people who don't know how to express all the things that you said. You don't even know. I'm listening to you. I'm like, you know what? If you figure it out, you'll figure it out. And
Oh,
I pray that we can have the courage to summarize it in the way that you've just stated.
oh, thank
That's
you.
always my prayer for people. Um,
Mhm.
I do know I don't want people to stalk you, but since you're a recruiter, I've
Mhm.
found that it's okay to reach out to recruiters and kind of send them an email. Hey, I just applied for a job, blah blah blah. So how can people reach you? what is your favorite way to be reached, or is there something else that works for you entirely?
Yeah, absolutely. Have folks reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me. My profile is public and available. My first name is Rose, last name F as in Frank, Rezza, and based in Austin, Texas, and working with the Texas market. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect and share any helpful tips that I can, or learn a little bit more about you if you are searching for a new role in marketing or advertising.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for your time. It's so valuable to me. And if I make my way to Austin, I keep saying this to everyone. I don't want to lie. I definitely would want to catch one of your shows again because you were such a great personality, and I don't forget those things.
Oh, thank you, Waneka. Yes, I hope to see you again soon too. You have a lot of friends here in the Austin area that love and remember you. So hopefully we'll all get to connect soon.
Thank you.